Hey, folks. Well, look, back-to-back losses versus Boston. The trade deadline has come and it's gone. What happens now? Are the Leafs any better? Do we even have a shot at this thing? Listen, we're going to break it all down for you right here on the OZone.
You're in the offensive zone, your place for Leafs hockey.
Hey, folks, welcome to the OZone. That's Coach. We love you, KD. I'm the Deeper. We're here to talk all things Leafs. I'm coming to you from Toronto, Coach. It's very spring-like, lots of rain outside. How are you doing?
I'm in the international headquarters, London. It's spring-like here, too. It's a nice day today. Oh. That's good because I was not in a good mood getting up today.
All right. I'm just going to say it because I got to, folks, hit subscribe, ring the bell, like, share the video, leave a comment. Love it when you leave comments. It helps drive us. All right, Coach, let's start with the games and the standings. You'll recall a little over a week ago, the Leafs had a pathway with 2 games coming up against the Bruins to maybe draw even with those big bad Bruins in the standings. They had to beat them, though. 2 games, 2 losses. Doesn't look like we are going to catch Boston at all in the standings this year, which means I think the Leafs really are going to finish third. It's pretty much a done deal. Coach, what do you make of all this?
Well, 9 back. I mean, we got two games in hand, but it sure doesn't look good. Anybody who knows me I love a good 4-pointer. And there were 2 different 4-pointers that we're on the wrong end of. Really not even close in either game. And it's a head scratcher, Devo, because if you look and you know, this is the week to look at rosters on paper. That's all we did with the Leafs. What are we going to do to upgrade? I'm sure Boston is doing the same. If you look at Boston's roster versus Toronto's, except for the crease, the Leafs look on paper to be a better team, but they're not, and they clearly weren't in both those games. Oh, they weren't very good in the game they squeaked out in overtime versus Buffalo either, but we'll leave that one. I don't know if there's a flu bug going around, but look, 4-1 losses, not in that game. And yes, we're rough and tumble now, and we certainly showed those guys a lesson. McCabe showed Marchand a lesson, cross-checked him in the throat. That's great. Where was that intensity when the shots were the shot attempts were 20-4 in the first period? Well, how does that happen? Look, Devo, if the rosters are the same or maybe the Leafs are better, if toughness now isn't the issue, which we believe we're a lot tougher, well, what is the other variable? How about the guy behind the bench? Yeah. Boston's a really well-coached team.
They are a very well-coached team. I mean, 2 things that stood out of that little bit that you just had there, Coach. Number one, I think we have to give Boston credit. Their goaltending has been exceptional. And when it's even come a little bit down to earth, they've actually dropped in the standings. But I agree with you. Their coaching has been very good for seemingly a long, long time. You watch the amount of space Matthews has to negotiate on the ice when he plays Boston. And it doesn't matter what line. I mean, the Leafs had a line change, last change in one of those games. He couldn't find space anywhere. There were guys all over him. And what are you going to do?
Yeah, but he'll free up in the playoffs, though, right?
Oh, for sure in the playoffs. It'll be no problem in the playoffs.
I mean,
okay.
One thing, like Boston's D is pretty solid and they're long. So, there's not a lot of space out there. I give them, you have to give them credit. Yeah. They do well at what they're intended to do, what they're kind of built for, and they're really well coached. They all play the same way.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, we said it sort of at the top here, but the Leafs overall, we're 5th overall in the Eastern Conference in points percentage anyways, which I think at this point in the game kind of matters the most. We don't have a ton of games left, and any games at hand, you have to kind of factor in at the rate that these teams are going. So we're just behind Carolina, whom we play next week. But at this point, it seems pretty clear they're going to play. Well, I guess it could be Boston or Florida in the first round, but it looks like it's probably going to be Boston. Coach, what do you think about that?
Yeah, with Boston sweeping and getting back in the race, they're only a point back as we
Yeah.
record this. Florida's got a game in hand. Should be a good battle for those teams to see who comes first in the division.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, our prize is we get the team that loses that race. But they're both pretty solid teams.
Mm-hmm.
The thing of it is, I saw something on the Twitter that in the past 3 seasons, they looked at the Leafs, Tampa, Boston, and Florida. And they looked at the stats. 5-on-5, the Leafs stats were as good or better than anyone else's. Special teams weren't great. So if you look at Boston, we just talked about who's got the better roster. That should be a close series 5-on-5. So will the Leafs special teams show up? I know we're going to talk about penalty killing in a second, but the power play has got to score. It's been a good power play all year. Can we carry that in? Because, man, it's stalled. It stalled against Tampa last year. Fortunately, pulled one out because the Stars were really good 5-on-5. It definitely stalled the year before against Tampa. So, yeah, I mean, big question mark there. And, hey, if Boston actually does overtake Florida, good luck. Florida they are built to be a playoff team. That's going to be a
true.
tough series.
Absolutely, and you're going to have to get out of both of them. That's the thing. Either way, you got to beat them both.
That's just so frustrating, Devo. When last year, right? Boston is a juggernaut. Like, did they have either the first or second best regular season of all time?
Yep.
And then they go out in the first round. I'm like, oh, this is great. The path, we finally went around. This is great. Then laid an egg against Florida. I don't see that happening again this year. I don't see the 1 seed get knocked off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're probably right. And you mentioned about the special teams. There's one thing, the most important special teams player, certainly on the penalty kill, is the goaltending. Boston has enjoyed the last 2 seasons, I think, pretty much the league's best save percentage. And Toronto hasn't. Let's just
say that. Funny though, Boston by far the best goaltending all year last year, and then they struggled in the first round and they lost. Leafs up and down last year. Murray, Samsonov, and then Samsonov marginally, but outplays Vasilevsky. No one saw that coming.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But to hang your hat on that, like that's going to happen again. Hey, Joe Wall's going to go in there and outplay Swayman or Allmark. Both guys have better numbers.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Those guys are stacked. They got 2. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Let's take a look at the deadline. And I think most people. In Leafs land are a little bit, at best, meh. So let's look at it in aggregate. The Leafs add Lyubushkin, Edmondson, Dewar comes in at the last the last little bit there. That's it. Now the Leafs didn't give up their first round pick. They didn't give up any of their big futures. I know some people are excited about that. Not that any of those futures or draft picks will play with Matthews under this current contract. So we have to take a look at it, I think, from that perspective, really. What do you make of Treliving's first trade deadline day with the Leafs, Coach? Go for it.
Yeah, I'm like most Leaf fans. I'm disappointed. It was not a good week, Devo. It was illogical in places. Look, would we have loved to take a big swing like Vegas did? Go get Thomas Hertl, or like Carolina to go get Jake Gensel. Yeah, of course. Maybe those deals weren't there to be had. But What I don't understand is this: the two guys on the back end that they got are both solid depth
Mm-hmm.
additions to the team. Lyubushkin, we talked about on the last one. We know he fits. We know he can play with Riley. He's got the correct curve. He's got a right curve.
Mm-hmm.
Solid depth addition. You throw in an extra pick with him to double retain the salary. So
Yeah.
that should lead us to be okay. Well, something else is going to happen, right? And then
Yeah.
Edmondson also retained, also an extra pick to retain, right? And
Yeah.
I like that guy. He's 6'5". He's tough to play against. I'm sure we have the clip of him cross-checking Wayne Simmons in the head when he was with the Habs. Like, he's pretty
Yeah.
tough, but he's a bigger and maybe a little meaner Simon Benoit, right? So he
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
cancels out Benoit on the left side unless Edmondson can figure out how to play the right. They're saying he can in a pinch. We'll see. So, but
Yep.
you retain there. So there's two extra picks that they've thrown in, right? And there's a lot of talk about, well, other teams made moves and they didn't pay as much. Like the one with Okposo, no, Tarasenko going to Florida, they paid barely anything. Well, because he had a
Mm-hmm.
no trade, he wasn't going anywhere. So Ottawa took something, right? But
Yeah.
the Leafs paid extra to retain. So were you like me? Were you refreshing the thing? Hey, like getting close to 3:00 Eastern. Surely the
Yeah.
big move's coming. The big move's got to be coming, and it was doer.
Yeah.
That's not the big move, Devo.
Yeah.
However, you've been harping on it all year, right? So he should help. He's a solid guy, been in the league 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
at least on the PK, right? He should help. I mean, he must play a lot of PK minutes in Minnesota, right? Actually, I have that here. Hold on. So he played, well, he's the fourth most minutes on Minnesota. Well, but they've got a good power play. They've got a good penalty kill, I guess. So, oh, no, they don't. They're 29th in the league. So that's the guy that's going to shore up our penalty kill. Is a
Yeah.
guy who's a second killer, second unit guy on the 29th penalty kill. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and at least he's our fifth center. Like he's not going to play in the top. He's not going to unseat Domi. We didn't solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm underwhelmed, Devo. Like I actually maybe would have liked it if we did nothing. And roll with and then see what Simon Benoit does in the first round, because he's kind of squeezed out right now. Unless Liljegren comes out and you go back to 5 left curves.
Yeah.
It's a mess. I don't know. I just hope everybody else is weaker. I don't know.
Yeah. The curves on this stick is a real. It's a bit of a head scratcher. It still remains the same problem. And it's hard when you look at this team to have drive some sort of a comparable. So is this? I guess maybe this is the thing. Is this team better today than it was a week ago? And if I were to say the 2 biggest weaknesses if I were to say the 3 biggest weaknesses on the team were goaltending, maybe not in order, goaltending, penalty kill, which maybe is the same thing, and needing some meanness and ideally right-handed defenseman to sort of clean up what that looks like on the right-hand side. They got more meanness on the back end, and with Lyubushkin, he's unquestionably a right-handed stick. So they got something there. Edmondson is certainly mean and big, 6'5" every night, as you would like to say. Yeah. He can play on the right-hand side. So he is as much of a left-righty guy as McCabe is.
Yeah.
And I want to remind everyone, because there's some weird narrative out there, and it seems like Coach Keefe has bought into all of this. Brody is also a left guy that can play on the right-hand side. In fact, if you were to take the long and illustrious career of Edmondson and you were to add it to the career of McCabe and take all the games they played on the right-hand side, it's not as many as Brody's played on the right-hand side. Brody is actually He is an RD.
He's played there for 8 years. What are we
Like
talking
it's crazy to me that I'm looking at a lineup for tonight's game against Montreal, and McCabe is playing on the right side and Brody's playing on the left. It's almost like you're flipping coins here. Like I like McCabe when he's situationally and positionally a little bit tighter than he can sometimes recklessly get into. I like his game. He's just fine on the left side. You don't have to force him into the right-hand side. And yeah, Brody's not had a great year this year, but that's just him not having a great year. It's not because he's playing on the right side. To say that we need to move him to his strong side, compared to what? Yeah. Compared to which awesome year did he have on the left side? You can't find one because he never played there.
No, that's right. He goes back to prime Geo. Like Norris Geo, he was his partner on the other side. What are we talking about? Yeah, it's crazy to me.
It's crazy to me. I think. Yeah,
look,
go.
It's fair to say he's tailed off this year. I mean, that's obvious, right? So I don't think that's a left side, right side thing. I think he's getting older, and I think he's had some stuff go on, like with his dad, that can affect you
for sure.
We need to hope,
and his wife. His wife's not
his
healthy.
wife. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, his wife. We need to hope that he gets it together, right, for the first round. He's too important. Because otherwise, you see some people, he's got to come out and leave Liljegren in. Liljegren struggled too.
You've heard it. You've heard it from me, Coach.
Yeah,
I would do everything in the world to have him not in the lineup.
I really thought we moved a guy out in order to get a better guy in, and Liljegren would have fit the bill because he's younger, he's under control. Like I wouldn't have minded that. Obviously, that deal wasn't there. Or, I think he would have considered it. But if you're thinking now Liljegren is really a third pair guy, they have 6 third pair guys. And they lost Lagesson, who's another third pair guy.
Yeah.
Like they're, Edmondson, I will say this, penalty kill wise, I don't know if this guy Dewar, turns the dial much. I would much rather have Matthews kill penalties, man. At least he's got good instincts. That's why Marner's a good penalty killer. However, on the back end, Edmondson must be an upgrade on the PK just for the mere fact he's 6'5". And if you need a reason why I'm saying that, look at Justin Hall for the last 3 years. He can't get in the lineup in Detroit, but here he's a good penalty killer, mostly because he was big, right? Yeah. And he blocks shots. That's what Edmondson will do. That's what Lyubushkin does. I would hope the penalty kill improves a little bit because of that. It's going to have to. Boston, even though they lost Bergeron, good power play. Did you see? Right? I mean, I don't know. They got a couple of 5-on-3s and stuff, but their power play is good. And Florida's going to be good too. So penalty kill's got to get better.
It's got to get better. It's in the bottom third of the league, and if you just get that up to a certain point, it's a real big difference for this team for sure. And they've enjoyed they enjoyed a pretty good penalty kill.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. You made a big deal, rightly so, about the identity, the culture of the team is changing, right?
Yep.
Tougher. Not taking shit from anybody. Well, you're going to get some penalties when that happens.
Yeah.
And if your kill is, I think today it's 22nd in the league. If your kill is not very good, then you can't really play that way. You can't handcuff yourself. It's got to get it sorted out. This year, more than other years, where we just turn the other cheek like John Hockey and not even go into the corner on stuff. You don't take any penalties that way.
Yeah. It's a good point. I'm gonna throw some stuff up here on the screen too. I called your contact in the graphics department.
Yeah, the graphics guy. Yeah. You owed me a favor.
So this is the lineup for Game 3 of last year's matchup versus Tampa in the first round of the playoffs, and there's some noticeable pieces when you think about penalty kill for sure that you'll see from this forwards group that are no longer there. O'Reilly, obviously, Achari, Kerfoot, Lafferty, those guys, that was a role for them. Now, ultimately, that group didn't really produce much in the postseason last year. So it's, you question whether or not you're better or worse. Aston Reese was in that lineup for that third game. He wasn't really much of a difference maker. Look at the back end here. I find this really interesting. You've got also what I also thought was kind of interesting. Nyes was in the box for Game 3 of 2023. You look at the back end here: McCabe and Brody, Giordano and Hull, and Riley and Shen. Liljegren was not in the lineup. You'll recall the season before he was not in the lineup either. I don't know if his play this year has earned him any more trust from Keefe. Certainly, the last few weeks, it's been horrendous. He did not have a particularly good showing this past week against Boston and even Buffalo, for that matter.
Yeah.
You know, when I pull up this year and project it, and who knows where it's going to land, this is sort of what I'm showing. We look at that top six. The narrative has kind of been the Bertuzzi, Domi, Nylander line on line 2. It's the hold your breath if the puck comes across to your side of center. But you know, they do possess the puck. They're hard to play against around the other team's net. The Matthew Marner Nyes line seems pretty secure. I've got here McMahon, Tavares, Yarncroc. That really could be anyone. Holmgren, Robertson. Then I've got Dewar, Camp, and Reeves as your 4. Again, I'm not expecting a lot of offensive production from that lineup. The question is that any better? And really, I don't see it being any better. The only thing I will say about it is you've got Matthews, Marner, Nylander in the lineup.
Well,
those guys have to take a series over and win it. At least one, if not 2.
Yeah. Just of guys that are on both lists, Nylander is much better. He's having a huge year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marner's about the same, maybe not quite as good. Matthews is going to get 70 or close to it. He's better. Mm-hmm. It really hurts not having Ryan O'Reilly and Achari. Now, I know those guys didn't have a huge amount of points, but, man, they're rock solid, right? It hurts not having those guys. And so the jury's out on – essentially you move them out, and Domi and Bertuzzi are the guys you bring in the top 6, roughly speaking, right? Bertuzzi had an awesome playoff for Boston. Last year was the best player. They didn't get into the second round. And he's starting to heat up. I was actually pretty hard on him. I'm glad to be wrong on it. He's starting to go. This is really good for us.
I think he watches the pod, because once you tore a strip off him, he showed up with a chip on his shoulder.
I should have given him more time to come around. I'm glad to see he's coming around. Comes from a great family too.
Mm-hmm.
Full inside joke. Man, how solid is that last year's team down the middle with Matthews, O'Reilly, and Achari? You have Tavares on the wing, right? And that now you have Tavares at center, 1 year older, not having a great year. He already moved down to the third line, and Domi, which everybody's crossing their fingers. Can this guy not get exposed defensively?
Yeah,
I would say this though on the back end.
Yeah,
right?
We haven't got. I haven't listed it off, but let's look at that.
Yeah,
I've got Riley Lyubushkin. I've just put him at first pair. I think it's kind of irrelevant. I think he'll end up playing more minutes than any of the other guys on the left side. I've got McCabe and Brody swapped compared to tonight. I actually think that I feel pretty comfortable with that pairing. Yeah, as long as they're in that sort of 17 to 20 minutes. Not playing 28 minutes, and ideally, not putting Brody in a place where he has to match up too hard against something. And then I've got Edmondson and Liljegren just based on how the team is lined up
tonight, right? That's how they're going to open up. But
yeah.
So to me, Riley Shen, Riley Lyubushkin, about the same.
Yeah,
about the same. I think, and you would say, well, McCabe and Brody, they're the same. Well, they are, but for different reasons. I think McCabe is better this year than last,
Mm-hmm.
and we already talked about Brody is not as good. But so
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they're even. So they're your
Yep.
top four is about the same as last year. I think it's better on the back end once they figure out how to get Benoit back in with Edmondson. So if Edmondson can play the right side, and
Yes.
those two guys that are 6'4" and 6'5",
Yeah.
and can they play third? Like, you're not moving the puck really well with either of those guys, but you're
Mhm.
sure locking down your zone. Can they play against the other team's bottom six and not get caved in? Yeah, pretty solid. Like, I don't think anybody watching the Leafs this year, other than the most ardent stat nerds, would have Liljegren ahead of Benoit.
Yeah.
The problem is Liljegren shoots right, and
Yeah.
Benoit can't play the right side. So
No.
they're easing Edmondson in here on his strong side. I think we got 19 games left. We're going to see Edmondson on the right side just to see if he can do it for some of those games. And then, if Benoit ends up in the top six, that's a big group. That's a solid, mean group. Like, that's more like a group back there that is hard to play against in the playoffs. I like it.
Well, here's another thing. Another way to look at it. We know that Keefe is favoring McCabe on the right side of late. What maybe McCabe plays that right side, Liljegren falls out, and you bring Benoit in as well. You just have to switch the pairings up. But McCabe, Edmonds,
somebody else, but maybe Brody plays the right, which he can, which we already talked about. It would work. It would work. I really do think that's what happens. But here's the thing, Devo.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, and this is the third postseason in a row, maybe the fourth, the third for sure.
Yeah.
Where Liljegren, we've talked at the beginning of the year, this is his time to step into the top four role. It's right there for him every year. And in the playoffs, it's like, I don't think we can play this guy.
I don't think you can.
If that's going to be the case, why wouldn't you package him and move him somewhere?
Maybe
okay.
other.
Yeah. It's all coming back to me now. This is actually, I don't like Kyle Dubas. I don't think he was that great. I mean, if you want to see a bad deadline move, harken back to the Nick Foligno deal. But one thing he did really well that was even better than bringing in the rentals that were O'Reilly and Achari. We got nothing for those guys, after 25.
Foligno, yeah.
He, in the course of all that, when he got Shen, flipped Rasmus Sandin for a first rounder. Why can't we do that? We're talking about we don't want to spend our first because we don't have one the following year and we have barely any picks. If Liljegren's not going to play in the playoffs and you have 6 different guys who can play in the third pair, flip him if he's worth something. Get a second back. Get something where, then start building back your draft capital. Maybe then you use that to go get somebody. How the heck? I would rather have rented Noah Hannafin. He's a stud versus getting Edmondson, and I like Edmondson.
Yeah.
But where's he get? There's only so many third pair minutes to go around. Now I'm getting worked up, Devo.
And I'll tell you, I'm with you. I look at the lineup. I've been doing it for a month. Anyone who's paying attention on this pod, how do we get Liljegren out of the lineup? I'm not a fan. I don't think he's that good. I look at it like this. What do you do on 5-on-5, and then what else can you bring the team? He has to play on the right hand.
He's not very good killing penalties. He's the second or third option on the power play. Which is to say, he's third, which is to say he's not an option. The power play, they would throw Marner back there and go 5 forwards before he got any meaningful power play minutes.
Let me ask you this, Coach. Is there more room in the postseason than the regular season?
That's the old rhetorical question, right?
So and let me ask you this. If you had to trust your family to Liljegren breaking the puck out with a heavy forecheck coming at him and do something good with the puck, do you feel good about that situation? Do you feel good about that bet? Are you kissing everyone goodbye?
How do I get into witness protection?
So I agree. I think he's a huge liability in the postseason. I think Keefe knows it. I don't think Keefe wants to play him if he can. I think I think you have options to play the right side with Brody with the left stick, with McCabe with the left stick, with Edmonston with the left stick. I would rather see Benoit on the ice than
you got to have
Liljegren.
somebody that could go back there, take a hit, and make a play.
Yeah.
And you don't have time to go, make a little move on a guy, take 3-4 more seconds, and then hit Nylander streaking. It's not going to happen. It's not there. It's here now, right? In March, but it's not in April.
Yeah. Well, so there it is, folks. They got to play the games. They still got to go out and play the games. And let's remember, we got some of the biggest stars in the game. Those guys have to show up. We're talking about, in a lot of ways, all these extra players that fall around the margins. But when Mario Lemieux was in the final, he went nuts. When Wayne Gretzky was in the finals, postseason, he went nuts. Sidney Crosby, he went nuts. These guys have all had big postseasons. You go to Colorado, look at their stars, McKinnon, Makar. Those guys have had great postseasons in their resume. The one thing Matthews does not have, the one thing Marner they don't have big postseason performances. Maybe this is the year. And all this extra talk about who's on their team doesn't matter. No one will even remember. But they still got to play the games. And we're going to be here to talk about it for you, folks. We're going to always be here, right here on the OZone.